That is easily, am I doing this? Okay. That is easily the best reaction that my great-great-granduncle has gotten in about 100 years. He died in 1908, so. Actually, my ancestry while it's also interesting trivia, at least to members of my family, is, I think, part and parcel of the story of the Daily Dot. So I'm going to be coming back to that in just a second. But first of all, I think the first question is, what is the Daily Dot? And the Daily Dot actually began, as most startups do, as an idea on a cocktail napkin. It was not mine. It was my co-founder, Nova Spivak's, and he said, a lot of people cover the internet for geeks and for entrepreneurs and for investors, but who covers it for, people? Like normal people. And oddly, he told me this idea. Actually, he told my friend Josh this idea, and then Josh told me this idea, and I thought, what a cool idea. Somebody should do that. Why don't we do that? And so we did. And so the Daily Dot began from that, but ultimately what it is a newspaper about internet communities. So we like to think of it as if the United States has the New York Times and France has Le Monde, the internet has the Daily Dot. And the thing is as a journalism startup, and partly because of my background, we did a lot of things wrong. First of all, we conceived of ourselves as a newspaper, which on the day that we launched, we were told that while we were probably a good idea, we had a really bad metaphor, which was very odd criticism to get, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but nevertheless, I took it and thought about it dutifully. But I still stick with the metaphor, and the reason is because we care about news gathering first and foremost. One of the questions that we regularly ask prospective newsroom employees is, if you had to pick between one, which would you pick, reporting or writing? And for us, the right answer is reporting. And that's because of the other thing that we did wrong. We started a new category. Really isn't anybody else who exclusively covers internet community news. And you can't do that if you're not willing to actually generate original information, original news that no one else has found before. And when you have audience data, and that's a core piece of your business, that's one of the key assets of your business, you're faced with a strategic question. Do you give the people what they want, or do you give them what they need? And there's actually a really good business model for both, it should be said. In fact, arguably the business model for pandering is far better than the business model for giving people what they need. You have to look no further. I don't want to call anyone out, but one name would perhaps rhyme with Mox News, or to be a little bit more current, another rhyme would be Pupworthy. And we don't want to do that. We want to do something else. We want to give people not only what they need and what they should care about, but we want to give it to them in a way that they will, in fact, care about it. So, okay, maybe that lead art is a little bit pandering. But the story of this article is that one of the early communities that we focused on a lot was Reddit. And what we discovered in our audience research was that the number one thing that people were searching for, along with Reddit, was NSFW search terms. They wanted porn on Reddit. I know that shocks many of you. But we didn't decide, okay, we're going to do a story, the 11 best NSFW subreddits, the 17 best porn shots on Reddit. We didn't do that. What we did, in fact, was a series of interviews with the most popular users of the r/GoneWild forums. We tracked down all of the women who were exposing themselves on Reddit and said, why are you doing this? What's this all about for you? Why do you keep doing it? And for those of you who watched any kind of cable television in the 90s, remember all of the ads about Girls Gone Wild. And I have to say, for me, what I always wondered was, who are you and why are you doing this? And which, for those of you who are, if that didn't make it obvious, I'm the worst person in the world to go to a strip club with, so don't invite me to do that later. Because I'm always sort of wondering, what was your career path? And where did I go wrong? But more broadly, bigger than thinking, okay, we know that people are interested in this, but how do we cover it in a way that's interesting, that is engaging, that is surprising, that is insightful? The other question we ask is, when we're going to go out and our job, our mission is to tell the story of the internet. That's what we do every day in all of the articles that we write. One way or another, we're telling the story about the internet. No matter how weird or esoteric or bizarre or niche-y that might be, it is our job, because we're a newspaper, to tell that entire story, every bit of it. And that presents a challenge. But we think that from a distribution standpoint, but we think that the core insight, and this was one of our founding insights, was the notion that every single article, no matter how weird, no matter how bizarre or strange or internet freaky it could be, there was somebody out there who would love that story, who would need to read that story. And this was actually borne out for us in real life within a few months of launching. And this was our third most popular story in our first 6 months. I'm going to do a little audience participation again. Raise your right hand if you know what a brony is. Ooh. Now raise your other hand if you are a brony. Ooh, not a lot of those. Man. So, for those of you who don't know, a brony is often an adult and often male fan of the TV show, the cartoon, My Little Pony. There are actually more of them than you would think. I will point out that no one in this room raised their hand saying that they were a brony, but our audience data would suggest that at least one of you is. Just saying. So, why was this story so big? We wrote a story about bronies, which not a whole lot of people do, and which makes me think Gawker was right when they said weird internet people now, crazy internet people now have their own newspaper. But there was a website, there is a website, it's still there, called equestriadaily.com. I encourage you to check it out. It is, in fact, the news organization for bronies. And a wave of traffic hit our servers, which stayed up. We were thrilled. But they were there. That audience existed. We didn't know they were there. We didn't even know at the time how to find them, but they were there. That passionate group of people for whom this was an essential story was there, and they found it, and they read it, and they loved it, and hopefully a few of them came back. The trick of it is, I'm here to sort of contend that a core competency of the media company in the digital world is the ability to market every single piece of content to its particular perfect audience. That is actually a hugely daunting task. We're a tiny company. We're brand new. The New York Times, I think, puts out more than 300 pieces of content a day. We put out 55. We have, even at 2.5 years in, we have 2 different brands, we have 12 sections, we have those 55 stories a week, and somehow we need to figure out how to get each and every single one of those in front of the perfect people every day. That isn't easy, but it can be done. And to some extent, it's good news for journalism, because it does mean that not everybody can do it. Because you have to have the will and the commitment and the resources and the practices and the know-how to be able to do that day in and day out. So in terms of requiring an institution, I think the need for data actually favors and is the modern equivalent, maybe not of the printing press, but of the circulation department. And I think it's very odd that for all the sort of bemoaning of the fact that the printing press is no longer relevant, I really have never heard a publisher talking about how sad it was that his circulation department was under threat, which I think is strange. Some of my best friends work in circulation. But I think that's actually where we are, is that we still need circulation departments, and it's being completely ignored by the media. Thank you very much.